Extinction Rebellion is today's episode on Dog Entertainment. Now, I'm going to make this a regular series, and as usual, as I've explained in previous videos, basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going from something slightly more frivolous to something slightly more intellectually stimulating or kind of just more serious, I guess. Like an actual topic that isn't football Twitter or Plants vs Zombies. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the Extinction Rebellion website, and this is what it calls its demands. It's basically what Extinction Rebellion itself stands for, and what people are getting behind who support it. I'll also give you a second to laugh at me because I use Firefox, because I know a lot of you find that fun. Alright, let's get into it. 1. Tell the truth. All institutions must communicate the danger we are in. We must be clear about the extreme cascading risks humanity now faces, the injustice this represents, its historic roots, and the urgent need for rapid political, social, and economic change. This seems fair, I'm not gonna lie to you. This doesn't seem massively controversial. Sure, you might disagree with it, but there's nothing hugely controversial about this first demand. Demand 2. Acts now. Every part of society must act now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2025 and begin protecting and repairing nature immediately. The whole of society must move into a new precautionary paradigm where life is sacred and all are in service to ensure its future. Okay, again, not hugely controversial, would be moving towards this anyway, maybe slightly slower than would be maybe to the liking of Extinction Rebellion, but we're moving there nonetheless. 3. Decide together. We demand a culture of participation, fairness, and transparency. The government must create and be led by a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. Only the common sense of ordinary people will help us navigate this challenging decision ahead. Wow, okay, that third one kind of comes out a bullet a gate. So, firstly, the Citizens' Assembly, I can see that being potentially problematic, especially when it comes to ecological justice and climate, bearing in mind that yes, there are a lot of people that are very passionate about it, that know a lot about it, but there's also a vast amount of people that don't really know what they're talking about, which could lead to a few problems down the line. You know, it says, only the common sense of ordinary people will help us. I mean, I've lived in this country for what must be like 15, 16 years now. It's not... The common sense of the ordinary person really isn't as, like, good as you would have thought. Now, I like this idea on paper. In practice, this seems a bit too kind of, how to say... optimistic, idealistic, for it to actually work. But, you know, I'll give it time. I'll let them kind of, you know, convince me, because up next it tells us to find out more about the citizens' assemblies. Alright, let's get into it. For those wondering, by the way, because I didn't really explain it, what a public assembly is, it's basically a group of people picked at random to come in and discuss issues. So when they were talking there about having a citizens' assembly for kind of environmental discussion, that's what I was referring to when I was disagreeing with it being potentially a good idea. But, you know, that's just my opinion. I think it could work. Like I said, it's idealistic. And potentially, you know, who knows? In the future, it might work out and maybe it's a genius idea. Who knows? Time will tell. However, the Citizens' Assembly idea by Extinction Rebellion has been defended. And it's actually got some interesting points now that I've read through them that I think will genuinely provide nuance that would maybe turn some people towards actually their movement. So what they've said here is they've said opposition is a problem. Basically, electoral politics is very divided with parties. What they want is a citizens' assembly that's kind of more apolitical. And sure, your political ideals will kind of slip into that, but it will generally be more apolitical when talking about the environment. So then you're not kind of forced to kind of think, oh no, I'm not properly representing, you know, the Labour Party here, or the Lib Dems, or the Conservative Party. Instead, you basically, what I understand from them saying, is that it's not kind of opposition based. It's more so based upon your genuine opinion and your authentic ideas, rather than being kind of to a kind of tag that you must fulfill, which I think is interesting. The second thing is lobbying and donors. Okay, so basically the Citizens Assembly, they're saying, is less likely to be influenced by lobbyists. It's just basically made up of random people rather than people necessarily put in there. A Citizens Assembly is run by an independent organization free from interference by government, corporations, or anything else. This includes Extinction Rebellion. The process is transparent, is what they're arguing. Now, there's no such thing as transparency. Or, personally, I don't believe in it. There would obviously be influences at play. However, I do like where they're coming from here, that, you know, there is a lot less likely to someone basically put into a position through nepotism. It's actually impossible with the Citizens Assembly. But like I was saying in the first place, you're also going to get a lot of people there that don't necessarily know what they're talking about. It's kind of the problem with jury duty as well. You know, sure, they do list out certain types of people that can't do jury duty. There's also a kind of problem, I think, possibly, with having this, that maybe someone that doesn't quite know what they're talking about will get roped in, and then they'll be forced to make a decision that could potentially sway basically the environmental future, or just the future of the country, or countries, or world, you know? Which I think quite possibly isn't the way to go about it. But, you know, they have raised some interesting and relatively convincing arguments so far. The next thing they've got is short-term thinking. They're basically saying here that quite a lot of politicians want to be re-elected. You know, kind of party politics is basically a 5-year cycle that goes on and on and on. They're saying here that basically the Citizens Assembly will not allow for this. There's no re-election. There's no influence. It's basically they're going to be concerned about the future and the future only. Do I think this is the case? Yes, it will be more so the case with the Citizens Assembly, I agree, wholeheartedly. Do I think that they are only going to be looking for the future? No, again, I think that is very optimistic. And I understand this whole kind of structure of Extinction Rebellion is kind of built on optimism. I'm, of course, a raging pessimist, so it makes me kind of slightly, maybe reasonably concerned about kind of the future here. But I do, again, agree with the fact that, yes, they will be less likely to want to be re-elected because of the structure of a Citizens Assembly, yes. So, you know, let's see where this goes, and potentially, if they do get it done, it could be interesting to see, you know? Finally, it's not representative. Electoral politics have basically got to be representative of the people. MPs hold the power to make the policy, which is just completely true, which is apparently a problem with electoral politics. And I understand kind of where they're coming from. Oh yeah, well, you might want something, but your MP doesn't do what you want because they, again, are trapped in the cycle of politics and it's not actually able to be done. But I need to pose this question. How do you think the Citizens Assembly is also going to get things done? Just because the Citizens Assembly agrees to do something, it's not like that's going to be pushed straight to the front of the line. There's a lot of things that need to be get there. A lot of things that need to be done, right? You can't just keep doing this and kind of thinking, right, well, finally, you know, the people have spoken. I mean, how do you know, for example, and this is the fear with the Citizens Assembly for me personally, you might get a genuinely really misrepresentative view that is spread across. Now, it's nicknamed tyranny of the majority. It's kind of a problem people often kind of assert with this kind of model. And I don't necessarily think it's the strongest example, but what I do think is in an example like this, it certainly could come into play, which I think could potentially be dangerous. Again, though, we'd have to see it play out, and I would be interested to see it. So, the Citizens Assembly as well, it talks about members of the Citizens Assembly are going to be from different walks of life, gender, ethnicity, etc. Sorry, so electoral politics just doesn't have that. Well, I'm sorry, it does. Randomly selected like a jury. Again, we've discussed the issues with the jury model, but the CA is a cross-section of society, a mini-public, a group of people with a range of lived experiences, opinions, and attitudes. Now, I think that is the most important part, the range. Because, to be honest, British politics has kind of been boiled down to maybe 6 or 7 archetypes that basically mush together to make the political system. However, there are so many more people that don't get into politics because they don't have the opportunity, or is not available to them, or they don't have connections, or whatever, right? The Citizens' Assembly would allow for random people to get in, which would, in theory, be a good thing if done well. But again, we've discussed the issue with a jury-like system. So, again, I'm going to have to go back to it. We're going to have to see it to see if it works. Do I think it's a good idea? I think if it was trialed and it worked well, it could actually be revolutionary. I mean, citizens' assemblies are becoming a lot more popular around the world. I know Northern Ireland have got theirs, and it's really, really doing well there. So, it would be interesting to see, in all fairness. Yeah, I hope we do see something like this. Maybe not exactly this, but something like it at some point. It would be pretty cool, I think. So now we're going to move on from Extinction Rebellion in theory to Extinction Rebellion in practice. So they mention the fact, first and foremost, they are a non-violent organization. And that, in fairness to them, to their credit, is completely true. I haven't seen much, and if it is, it's kind of minorities in the group that are being violent. So as a result, kind of what you've got is you've got Extinction Rebellion hardcore, which are more likely to not be violent, and then you've obviously got the kind of members that are kind of joining, they agree with it, but they're maybe more extremist, where they want to actually get things done quicker, and they think by kind of how they'll achieve by doing this quicker is violence. Is it the answer? Who knows? You know, the suffragettes used it. They were considered terrorists at the time, they were considered troublemakers at the time. The IRA have done it. You know, multiple people have done it. And it kind of depends on perspective, what you think of that. But anyway, we move on to actions. Alright, see you there. So here, for example, we've got an exhibit of someone tying himself to a road. Now, this is in the name of Extinction Rebellion. Yes, it's stopping people from getting to work. I understand the dangers of this to them themselves, and also the inconvenience it's causing to the people who are trying to get to work. Now, I think, to be honest, do I agree with this? Part of me completely does, wholeheartedly, because what they're doing is basically fighting for something that they genuinely believe in. And actually, in fairness, it will spark conversation across the country, possibly across the world, because this is a global thing. I've seen similar things on Australian media, German media, less so in Scandinavian media, which I don't know why I actually keep... Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. Basically what happens is people will tie themselves to a road and stop people from getting to work. Now, some people are calling this selfish. It's anything but, to be honest, in my opinion. They're stopping people from getting to work, yes. Now the danger with this is they're stopping people from getting to work. They might not get paid because they might turn up 2 hours late. They might get home, not be able to put food on the table, maybe aren't able to, you know, pay the electricity bill or the water bill. Maybe, you know, they can't afford heating or whatever for the next, you know, or live comfortably, basically, for that period of time. The people are blocking the roads and whatnot. However, it doesn't last very long. Generally, these protests are a few days. Generally, it is to spark conversation as well. They're not doing it to spite the people, the individuals trying to commute to work, which is why I don't think this is terrible. I think it's mildly frustrating, and if I was caught in it, I'd be a bit annoyed. But you've also got to look at the bigger picture. What are they trying to achieve? Well, Extinction Rebellion themselves set out their 3 demands. Now, if you can't remember them, just flip back to the context that I showed a few minutes ago. But basically what they want to achieve is they want to achieve communication. They want people to talk about this. They want Parliament to be talking about it. And this is the best non-violent way of doing it. We've also got another example of that guy who tied himself to the Everton goal a few months ago, maybe last year even. Now again, sparks massive talk online. Yeah, people were calling him a silly twat. Yeah, people were, you know, making fun of him. But it sparks conversation. People started talking, secondary, about what he was doing it for. Once people realised what he was doing it for, again, he got grief. But it also sparked conversation. These events, these things that people are doing, are sparking conversation. And I think the best thing about it is that social media is grappling onto that. Back, you know, with like Gandhi and stuff, he was trying to non-violently protest, and he couldn't really get very far because, you know, frankly, it was local, and he was also putting up with a pretty oppressive regime in the British in India, who, you know, let's be honest, were not the nicest empire to be under control of. Definitely not the worst, though. Again, I am going on a tangent. Social media has basically allowed for people to see this and discuss it, and it goes so far as it goes to Parliament, which is where they want the discussion to be had. Is it the right thing to do? Arguable. Is it working? Absolutely. Is anyone getting hurt? Maybe indirectly, but directly no. So is it unjust? Personally, I think not. So let's have a look now at the public opinion of Extinction Rebellion. I'm going to be using Twitter because that's where quite a lot of political debate is now for some reason. It's terrible. I literally made a video on why I don't like Twitter, particularly in the last one. But like I said, it's for some reason the website people have chosen to run their political commentary. So let's have a look. Okay, so after a gander on Twitter, and they're definitely not getting distracted because, you know, it's Twitter, I came to the conclusion that basically the public opinion is you support the cause because, you know, you believe in it. You think that you're saving the planet, you think that you're saving stuff. That's the one hand, right? On the other hand, you've got people basically saying you're causing a public nuisance, you're damaging property, you're upsetting people, and you're not really achieving anything. So I think the main thing on the against was basically, yeah, that damaging property, it's illegal. Can you not do this in another way? If they were being reasonable. I mean, to be honest, it was kind of just a shouting match because it's Twitter. But that was basically the impression I got on the one hand. So in response to this, I think genuinely the damage that they're causing is a bit of a problem, right? And I think they should be made to obviously pay it back up. Should it lead to arrests and stuff? Probably not. Fines would suffice, I think. But, you know, to be honest, I think Extinction Rebellion would probably be more than happy to pay for it once that they've made their point. It's not an entirely unreasonable organisation. I mean, if you look at some of the organisations of the past that have tried to achieve things, they've been a lot more unreasonable trying to achieve their political goals. I mean, you know, I'm sure you can think of many off the top of your head. However, on the side of Extinction Rebellion, you've also got a lot of people saying, yeah, this is what I want, this is what has to happen. Well, no, it doesn't have to happen, to be honest. And I admire the fact that they're not just sitting down and saying, oh, we're confined to it, because that's personally my view. I think we are confined to human suffering because humans are fucking stupid, right? Because, you know, say we do somehow, and I mean somehow, manage to avoid the climate crisis by 2025 and then the next goal by 2030. Because I think I've read multiple places saying that 2030 is basically the irreparable damage stage. If we can somehow do something by 2030, then, you know, I'm sure something else will come up and we'll be fucked by nuclear weapons. But that's besides the point. Back to it. Their argument is, okay, well, we've got to try, right? We've got to try and save the planet. We've got to try and, you know, affect positive change now. That was their second premise. Act now, right? If they're not, and that's what they're trying to do, right? See, the only issue is, I see a lot of Twitter activism on their page. And you actually, and I know this might sound a bit weird, but I've gone into the people's bios and stuff that have got the kind of top responses. And not many of them have actually done anything. Quite a lot of them are talking about it a lot online, which is admittedly the first step to actually making a change, is talking about it. But it does seem to be quite a lot of bark, not a lot of bite, right? And so yeah, there have been famous examples of stuff happening. But if this is really going to become a very serious movement that genuinely makes government shudder and think, right, we got to sit up and take notes because, you know, this is going, you know, a lot of people are thinking here that, you know, right, we need to affect the change now. They're going to have to do a bit more, right? And when I say more, I'm not talking about violence, I'm not talking about anything else, I'm just talking about this on a larger scale. There were protests last year where thousands of people basically shut down London. That basically stopped areas of London from working for a few hours. That kind of thing is what they need to do more on a regular basis, but on a basis that will inconvenience people, but not basically bring the country to a standstill. And I think that is where they're going to achieve their goals. Because they'll get attention, it will frustrate people, and it will get talked about. The exact three things that I was talking about with the whole Everton fan situation. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Hope you enjoyed. This was kind of an unscripted rant. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Alright? Catch you in the conclusion. Okay, so we're joined by Ethan. Ethan, so what do you think of Extinction Rebellion? What are your genuine opinions on that?
I think they're a good group. I think they get an unnecessary amount of hate, and I think it's completely unwarranted. So, like, you know, people will always complain and make jokes about people gluing themselves to the road, and that, I mean, right. I know this is just stop oil and stuff, right. But yeah. I've always thought, really, when I look at them, like, are people really gonna care in like 50 years time, or even like 20 years time, when the climate right. crisis gets a lot worse? Are people gonna care whether Keith got to work on time 20 years ago, or are we gonna actually care about our climate and the amount of pressure we put on the government? I feel like in a few years, probably a lot of people will be thinking, why didn't I join them?
Yeah.
I think the effects of the climate crisis will probably be, well, definitely will be massive, unless we do something like right now. And I mean, always with groups like this, then you'll just get people just hating on it, just reactionaries in general, and it's never going to be popular at first, but I think people need to think for themselves rather than just what they see on TV and what they see on.
So what do you think about, so I was thinking about this, right? And you highlighted this point as well. In the future, how do you think it will be viewed?
I think it will be viewed as definitely very positive. I mean, you get groups that have used violent means to further their goals.
So the thing is
who are really popular. So, for example, in France, French Revolution, there was that beheading a load of people, and it was an armed uprising and everything. But everyone said, so at the time, people would have thought, oh my god, this is chaos, especially in our country.
Right.
So there will always be people who are just against it, just because it's different and they're offering something different to what's happening now.
Right. Yeah.
I think you just need to not listen to it. So, but I think in the future, then it will be looked at in a very positive light. So, for example, the suffragettes.
Yes, that was an example.
Sometimes they even, so they're gonna. I mean, they use violent means. There was the suffragists who were pacifists, and most people actually won't know who the suffragists are.
Right.
But most people do.
Do you think that the influence of social media and possibly the attention that they're getting, despite their non-violence means, has an effect on this? Because, say, for example, I'm not sure if you remember, but earlier this year, maybe late last year, an Everton fan glued himself to a goal at Goodison Park.
I remember that. I don't keep up with football.
It was talked about across the country, but because basically did it as a just stop oil protest.
Yeah.
So do you think that social media basically allows it to be less violent? Do you think that they can basically spread their message without having to cause terror/violence?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it terror.
That's what some people call it.
Or violence. No, I think social media just means it gets sensationalized and it gets exaggerated, the damage that they're doing. Like, they're really not doing a lot.
Yeah, true.
I think there's definitely worse they could be doing, and there's definitely worse things they could be doing that I would still think is justifiable.
But So,
I think social media and just media in general just sort of allows for people to take a lazy opinion and not think, okay, this road's being blocked. Okay, someone's painting this building orange.
right.
But in the future, we will be thankful. We will be thankful for these people.
Okay, thank you for your time, Ethan.
Thanks.
And, yeah. That was
Alright.
Ethan. This kind of leads me to the conclusion of the video. What do we think of Extinction Rebellion? Now, personally, I don't think they're terrible. Personally, I think Extinction Rebellion definitely has its problems. Definitely comes across very in your face, and that is entirely intentional. So it's clever. Is it frustrating? Yes, if you're trying to commute to work, if you're trying to get to places, you know, say you're trying to get to the hospital or something, your wife's giving birth and you can't get there in time. Or God forbid your wife's actually in the car giving birth and you can't get to the hospital in time because someone's sitting on the road. It would be infuriating. I agree. But at the same time, what they're trying to achieve is noble. And how they're achieving it is not violent, it's not terrible, and quite frankly, I think in the future, these people that are doing the Extinction Rebellion work will be viewed upon quite like some of the very famous suffragettes or social justice warriors of yesteryear. Greta Thunberg could genuinely go down as a Martin Luther King Jr. or a Gandhi or a Pankhurst, right? And I think this is at a point where we're at. We're living through history, whether you want to admit it or not. And I think, to be honest, the way it's going, Extinction Rebellion are on the right side of that history. Now, no matter what you think of them, if you just want to completely disagree with them, that is your right, right? But I think what we have to keep in mind is that these people are not acting selfishly. They're acting for me, they're acting for you, they're acting for your children, your grandchildren, and everyone else that follows, because they are genuinely trying to enact change legally as well to try and help those in the future. And I think, honestly, with a cause so noble, it's hard to bash them. Sure, their memes might be dodgy at times, but my god are their ends worthwhile. And that is a cause, I think, is worth fighting for. So that was that. Hope you enjoyed. To be honest, I might do some more like pseudo-political commentary at some point again, because it's funny and I like doing it. If you again got any recommendations for more of the Dog Shit Entertainment episode 3, then please let me know. And you know, if you like the video, then like and subscribe on. I'm done. Alright, see you.
Hey up, it's me, Chewbacca from Space Film. It would be so awesome. It would be so cool. Have you finished it?